Hello and welcome to Daf Yomi B'Halacha. We're learning today Siman Tov Tzadi Ches, Seif Tes Zayin and Seif Yud Zayin. We've discussed halachas of shechting on Yom Tov. We said shechita is mutar on Yom Tov, you can shecht on Yom Tov. The question is only how to do Kisei Hadam. So the Shulchan Aruch said in the last two sifim, a person should designate before Yom Tov either earth or ashes in order to do the Kisei Hadam, and then you can shecht on Yom Tov. Says the Shulchan Aruch Sif Tezayin, Hechnis Ofar Harbe, a person brought into his house a lot of earth. Leveisai into his house, L'tzoyrech Ginosai, he needed it for his garden area. Don't forget, they used to use earth not just for Kisei Hadam, they used it for many other things in those days. They used to use it to cover mess, etc., in the house and outside. So they'd prepare and designate earth before Yom Tov. And if a person did so, he brought into his house a lot of earth, L'tzoyrech Ginosai, for his garden, etc., for his usage. He puts a large amount in one area. He's allowed to use that for Kisei Hadam. That means, well, as long as it is in a pile, he plans to use it for all his needs. And they can use it for Kisei Hadam as well, for covering the blood. If he just has a small amount which he brought into the house, just a small amount just for his garden, he's not allowed to, since it's just a small amount, bottle, considered insignificant to the ground itself. Suppose the ground wasn't actually paved and covered, it was just an earthen ground, and therefore it just becomes part and parcel of the ground, and it cannot be used for can't be used for the purpose of Kisei Hadam, because it's just part of the ground, and to move an item which is part of the ground is forbidden on Yom Tov. Sivkotam Pei Aleph. It's basically the Tzorech Ginosai. He's brought it into his house because he needs it for his garden. That means it was clear. His intent was to use it to spread over his garden. Therefore, only if there's a lot of earth, it's permitted because it's assumed to be available for usage. When it's piled, it's expected to be used. If it's just one bag full, it's not allowed. Even if it's put in a designated corner, it doesn't help you. Now, if you look at Sif Yud Zayin, you'll see a different story. Mishnah Berurah can explain the difference between our Sif and Sif Yud Zayin. Sif Yud Zayin, shehechnis lebayis bestam. In Sif Yud Zayin, we're talking about a person who brought it into his house without any agenda. In which case, even if it's just a bag's worth, one container's worth, it's permitted if you put it into one corner, as we'll see. So some explain that Sif Zayin is talking about when he brought it into the house, stam, with no specific intention, and therefore, even if it's just a small amount, a bag's worth put into one corner, it's already okay. However, Yeshmin and others, Shasayim, they hold there's a different distinction between our Sif and Sif Yud Zayin. Here we're talking about he brought it actually into the garden. So and then we say if he actually brought it into the garden, not into the house, into the garden, then is that if it's only a small amount, it's bottled to the actual ground of the garden and can't be used on Yom Tov. But if it was brought into a house or a chotze, although it's just a bag's worth, and he designated the place, any bottle, it's not bottled, and it could be used on Yom Tov. So there's two reasons why Sif Yud Zayin might be more lenient, and Sif Yud Zayin will see permits even if it's just a bag's worth. Because one reason is because it was brought into the house without intention to use it for the garden, and B, because it wasn't actually brought into the garden. However, Sif Yud Zayin is talking about was brought into the house with no intent. According to the first pshat, according to the second pshat, it was brought actually according to the second pshat, it wasn't brought into the garden. That's why in Sif Yud Zayin even a small amount is permitted. Right, so again, our Sif, the Shulchan Aruch says, a person brings a lot of earth before Yom Tov into his house. If he brings it for garden purposes and it's a large collection, it's permitted. If it's a small collection, it's a small amount, it's asa, it's considered toppled to the ground. Either it's asa because it was brought to the tzorech gina, or it's asa because it was brought into the gina itself. Says Shulchan Aruch Sif Katan Pei Beis, v'konos b'makom echad. We're saying if it's a large amount collected in one place, he hasn't actually sprinkled it along his garden. It's still in a pile, so you can take some of it from this big pile and use it for Kisei Adam. All this pile is designated for any purpose you want. But you can use it for Kisei Adam. We can even shech lechatchila, relying on this to be usable for Kisei Adam. Al das offer there, relying on this offer. Like it concludes, shekol's man, as long as you have this pile of earth which was brought into the house for his garden, it's in one pile. So then the din is, it's okay. Any usage. Because the Achronim say this, there must be this earth is soft and fine. Because otherwise, also the Chassidus won't be able to take any of this earth to do Kisei Adam. And if with regard to shechting in the first situation, not just if you did shecht, if you want to shecht, it has to be not just soft inside with a hard earth around, in which case we'd matter, but if it wasn't shechted already, as we saw yesterday, in order to permit the Kisei Adam, if you want to be able to shech lechatchila, it has to be absolutely soft ground. There'll be no issue at all of making a gumma. To actually use this earth for any purpose whatsoever, then has to be so soft. Actually, that making a hole in it will not make any. Removing earth from it will make any hole. We discussed yesterday again. For shechita to be completely mutter, the earth should be completely completely soft. Or if it's partially soft, meaning where the hole is, it's soft, but around it's hard, then it's only mutter to push. As we said, then one has to also have a decker as well, and it's only been permitted because of in order to allow the mitzvah Kisei Adam, and it's only mutter because it's in the svicha legufa and mekalkal because it's not done in the way the hole is not being made for the earth for the hole, it's been made for the earth, and that's why there's certain permissibility. We discussed this yesterday. Siv Cotton Pei Dalet. So, person schlepped into his house. He brought into his house a big collection of earth, one big pile. And he plans to use it for his garden. He can use it for any purpose he wants. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Cotton Peidada Lechol Mashi Starech or Mashma the Lechol Tashmish Muta. It appears you can use it for any other purpose to cover anything else in his house. For example, that's what they used to use earth for. There are poskim that say they say no, you can only use it to cover the ground, the blood, Kisei Adam, not for other usages. I feel in a Kisei, even with regard to Kisei, Dafka, the evidence I'm sure this holds only if you actually shechted already, then you can use some earth from this pile. You shouldn't shecht lechatchila relying on this. If you're dying to the Kamil, there's a leniency with this respect, and if you're dying, because there's no absolute designation. Interesting type of issue over here. Normally we understand something which is designated for Yom Tov. It's designated for everything. If it's designated, you can use it for any purpose. It's not muksa. Here we come across an interesting idea in muksa. They can have something which is muksa designated for one purpose and can be used for that purpose, but not for another purpose. Well, poskim here, the Mishnah Berurah is bringing the whole back true. The earth was brought in the Serach Gino for his garden, and there's a big pile, and therefore it can be used for certain purposes. For example, Kisei Adam, it can't be used for other purposes. Since its main designation is for Gino, we permit it to be used for Kisei Adam because it's a mitzvah purpose, but the designation is not strong enough to permit it to be used for other usages. Interesting distinction, which generally in Hilchos Shabbos we don't generally find an amux item which is permitted for some usages, but not for other. Right, Seif Yod Zayin. Machnis Adam Maloi Kapasai often a bias. A person can bring a bag's worth into a box worth of earth into his house, bistam, with no agenda. But called sorokal, he can use it for anything he wants. And we don't say bottle like Avkaraka bias is considered part of the ground of the house, and therefore to remove it is considered removing part of the ground surface, which is forbidden on Yom Tov. And you're going to ask, we saw a few moments ago, if it's just a bag's worth, then it's going to be prohibited to be used. So there's two terutzim. One teretz is, as Mishnah Berurah said, that's talking about when you bring in in order to use the earth for gina, and here we're not using it for gina, using it for any stuff for general purposes. That was more lenient. And the other teretz is there he brought it into the garden itself. He's bringing it into the house. It means it's expected to be used for more usages. But it has to be put in a designated corner. By the fact he didn't actually spread it on the ground, it's clear he's not just put on the ground to be part of the floor. He actually wants to use this earth. And if it's soft earth, it can be used for Kisei Adam. Siv Cotton, Pei Mulai Kaposi can bring in Erev Yontef before Yontef, Ma'ara Isara Kaka, put it onto the ground, pour it on the ground. This stamp had no agenda. He didn't expect it to be used. He didn't bring it in for the garden. He brought it for general usage. And that's permitted. You bring it into your house for general usage, it's permitted, even if it's one, even if it's just a small amount, one box, and it's provided it's put into a designated corner. But we look in Hilchos Shabbos, Hilchos Muktzah, and Siman Shin Ches, it says there, if it's brought in for general purpose into the house, it can be used even to cover excrement. After one may have thought perhaps it's only going to be able to be used for something which has a general purpose. But not for tzoya, because tzoya it's not always going to be needed for tzoya. Perhaps you can only use it for more of a general floor cleaning sort of purpose, but not to cover tzoya, which is an abnormal type of or unexpected type of usage. No, it's permitted for that as well. The dafka because the reason is because he brought the earth in with no specific intent. So also mean, and then we say the data the chomash it's open usage and it can be used for anything. If he brought it in for one specific purpose, we brought it in especially for kisei adam, for any animals he plans to shecht on, any birds he plans to shecht on, the answer to the kisei adam. Also, you can't use it for covering excrement. There are those that permit also this. Again, as I mentioned before, interesting type of idea we're seeing here with regard to muksa. You have an item which is muksa for which is usable, not muksa for one purpose, but for other purposes it would be muksa. Agav karkavais, if it's only a small amount and he's bought it for general purposes, kept in one corner, he can use it for whatever he wants. And it's not considered part of the ground. Mishum mi'oto k'mosivagim, not like before, which is considered part of the ground because it's an insignificant amount of earth. Sheikha de Keren Zavas provided there's a designated area for it. Gam Zorach is a little bit of a shovel. Also, when one takes from, one can take from it, slide the top of it. Veloilas is good not to make a hole in it, because to make a hole in a collection of earth is an issa of boine. That's assuming that the hole would remain. Well, and although we're talking about tichuach, we're talking about tichuach, which has got a firm structure around it, a firm earth around it, the hole will be there, which is problem. Or if it's absolutely soft, the taker should as soon as the person removes some earth from it, immediately the hole disintegrates. That would also be okay. Since he didn't smear the contents on the ground, rather he kept in a corner, then it's designated for any purpose. I love even if he used it to cover what his needs, but and he kept it open usage for it. But if he spread it around the ground, it's not considered part of the ground, and it can't be moved from there. And if the earth is soft, then it's going to be permitted. Because anyway, whenever one does kisei adam, one must make sure that the earth is soft and fine. If it's clods of earth, it can't be used for kisei adam. So therefore, clearly, the offer has to be soft, fine earth to be able to use for kisei adam. If a person is not yet shechted, has to be so soft that when he removes the earth, the Yasser Guma will make a hole. As we said, mentioned before, you have to make sure you take off in a straight fashion, a straight line. Maybe it's at the moment it's slanting slightly, and therefore you just cut the top of the slant and removes the top earth. Won't be making any hole. Because otherwise, one can't shecht relying on the fact to make a hole in soft earth if the soft earth is surrounded by harder earth. That's only if you shechted, you could do that, as we mentioned yesterday. We discussed this again yesterday. Even it's interesting that instead of making a hole making is not just in land which is attached land, absolute land. The person can have a pot of earth or anything similar. Like here, we're talking here. There's a collection of earth in a pot or something similar, or in a bag, and to make a hole in that is an issa of boinet. But similarly, any sort of earth in a container. Therefore, says the Mishnah Berurah, an interesting halacha for Hilchos Yom Tov. A person shouldn't dig a candle into the container of earth. If the earth is partially firm, and he does so, he'll making an indent in hole in the earth. Although the earth is in this container, it's sort of making a gumma boina. If the earth is soft, that as soon as you move the candle, then the earth will just flatten out. That's not considered making a hole. Nevertheless, the removal of such a candle will relieve, and there will be a hole created by the removal of this that's not considered making a gumma. Making a gumma is making the hole in the first place, not revealing a gumma which was already made by the candle which was stuck into the ground. In fact, if you look at Siman Shin Yud Gimel, Sif Gimel, you'll see the Taz holds that such a thing does not actually involve making a gumma. If a person stabs something into the ground, it does not involve a siyas gumma. But here you see it involves a siyas gumma to stab something into the ground. Thank you, Rabbi Isai. As Hashem will continue with Sif Yud Ches and Yud Tes.